Run Disney at Disneyland is finally back, and we're going to talk about the pros, the cons, what's changed, and maybe we'll help you decide if this race is for you or maybe not.
To all who come to our happy place, welcome to the No Guilt Disney podcast, where we have no guilt about our love for all things Run Disney at Disneyland. Because we really do love it.
We really do. We really do. And you're going to find out. We are 3 Disney fangirls who are 2 today. And we probably know more about Run Disney Disneyland than most grown women should. And we are very, very perfectly okay with that.
100% A-okay with anything that has to do with Disneyland in general, but definitely when it comes to Run Disney. For those of you that are new here, I am Patty Holiday, No Guilt Disney, No Guilt Fangirl, No Guilt Life, No Guilt Travel, all things that. You can find me on socials at No Guilt Life. Jane?
My name is Jane, and you can find me on Instagram at RealMousewifeWDW.
Yes. And both of us have been running Run Disney for a very long time. I think Jane since what, 2010, 2009, something like that?
2008.
8? Okay.
Yeah.
And I know I've been running since 2011, but my first Disneyland Run Disney event was in 2012 because I did, I think this was even before Coast to Coast was a thing, but I did Princess and Tinkerbell that year.
So my first Disneyland was 2011, and I did it for the Coast to Coast. So I know that they definitely did Coast to Coast in 2011.
I was going off pictures, and I just now visualized what I ran for that year at Princess, and I do have a picture of me holding all 3 medals. So yes, it was Coast to Coast. So there was Coast to Coast. Okay, so we did do Coast to Coast. Sorry, I was just looking for an email that somebody had sent me about some additional concerns, and that I just wanted to share some of these things that might help this conversation that we're about to have. So I apologize for not being prepared. Who's not surprised?
We're never prepared.
No, never. But we try really, really hard. Okay. So the first race weekend from the last race weekend that we had at Disneyland was in 2017. They ended the races, and at the time they told us it was because of construction, which I think at that point there was supposed to be like a whole new big hotel. Remember where the ESPN building was in downtown Disney? Like that was going to be demolished, and they were going to give us a whole new hotel at that time. And essentially the conversation that I had with a Run Disney person at the end of the last race that year, he said, it's because of construction. Think of all the cool things that we're about to give you. This was pre-Galaxy's Edge.
That I was going to say, Galaxy's Edge was the other thing that they said they couldn't do.
And Toontown was getting like a whole big makeover, which now we ended up getting the Toontown makeover included Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, that sort of thing, plus Galaxy's Edge, plus this big hotel that was coming to be. And they said basically all of these places that we have you run through are going to be impacted, and we don't feel that we can give you the same experience. And so we're going to put this on hiatus until all the construction is done, and then we'll come back. And as the years went by, we all began to wonder if we were actually going to get these races back. And I will admit, I was not sure we were going to get these races back. And then they made the announcement, and we got the races back. And we've been happy and thrilled and excited ever since. So this is the recap from the first race weekend back after this very long period of not having races over there. And, essentially we're just going to talk about what I think went right, what I think we know. I think we can also be honest that like a lot of how we felt about these races are definitely nostalgic. Like it was Run Disney was going to have to do some really, really crappy things for us not to walk away at least satisfied, because we are the people that were saying, we're just so happy to be here. We are just so happy that this
Correct.
opportunity.
Our bar is so low.
Our bar is so low, very low. So keep that in mind as we discuss this. Is that's how much these races meant to us, that we were just thrilled to be there on some level, right? That being said, I did the 5K and the 10K. Jane did the 5K, the 10K, and the half marathon. I also did yoga. I did do yoga, so I can give you a little FYI information on yoga. So we did have the full race weekend experience. I stayed at the Disneyland hotel, so I stayed on property. Jane stayed off property. So we also can like explain how those two setups worked and what we liked and didn't like about them, because there were definitely, I think that I could still say I could give you reasons to stay on property, even though my current reasons are not the same as they were when we first registered for this race, because we thought it was going to look a little bit different. But I still can give you reasons why you may be interested in staying on property. Definitely give you reasons why you might want to stay off property, 100%. So we'll talk about some of those things as well. First, I'm just going to mention yoga for anybody who is curious about the yoga experience at Disneyland. If you have done yoga at Walt Disney World, Disneyland, as with all things physical at Disneyland, this was a smaller experience. So this is a heads up for anybody who is looking to register for yoga at the Halloween half marathon. I expect that to sell out very quickly again, because when I walked down Main Street and saw the amount of yoga mats laid out, it was just a lot fewer, a lot less than we have seen at the Walt Disney World yoga experiences, in my opinion. Disneyland, listening to this, might be going, no, girl, it was exactly the same. It felt a lot like it just felt smaller. It just did not feel like there was nearly as many mats out. So just as a heads up to that, if you are looking at registering for one of the Disneyland yoga experiences, you may want to, if it's really important to you, you might want to like move that up your list of, you know, which order you get you get your bibs, because they did sell out very quickly for this particular situation. And then when I saw it visually, I could tell you why. It was just a smaller group. But I thought the yoga itself was lovely. The teacher that they had talking to us she has a great accent, and it was very like yoga, like zen-y, like it was very California. Like I was all into this. I was like, oh, this feels so good. The things though that I absolutely notice that is a big difference for Disney World versus Disneyland is that hub area of Disneyland has a lot more trees. So trees and a smaller castle. There's just a smaller castle, y'all. She's so cute. She's just a little tiny thing. So the trees and the smaller castle meant you didn't have that same, like, I don't know, awe-inspiring experience, I think, that you get from doing yoga on Main Street at Walt Disney World for Princess. So if you were going to choose one or the other, this is one of those cases where I will say Walt Disney World does yoga better. I just felt it was a more impressive, more like visually, plus also just everything about it. A little bit, I'll give the nod to Disney World if you have to make a choice. Also, I think it's probably easier to get into the yogas at Disney World than it is at Disneyland, just because I think size matters. I just think it's smaller. But that's my only complaint. They actually had like a little photo set up with, and this one, yoga was themed Goofy. So Goofy was our yoga, whatever. So they actually had like a little theme thing. Goofy came out and had a little thing at the beginning of the yoga experience, which was cute because he didn't bring his mat. And then they had to go and get a mat. And anyway, it was adorable. So we did get to see characters. We did have, a photo opportunity at the end with PhotoPass. So that was all, it was nice. It was something different than they do at Walt Disney World. Walt Disney World so far, they have not had a photo opportunity like that, and they did not have a PhotoPass. But Walt Disney World did offer at Springtime Surprise, like they had tons of characters at the end of Springtime Surprise yoga where you could go take selfies with or have somebody take a picture with you. They were up on a stage that you could stand right in front of them and take these pictures. They didn't have any of that. No characters were available for us to take pictures at this yoga experience. But yoga at Disneyland, it's a thing. It's an option if you've ever wanted to do it. I wouldn't say not to. I would just say cost-wise and experience-wise, I do think I preferred Walt Disney World more for this. Okay, moving on to Expo logistics and situation. And once again, as a reminder, I am a Club Run Disney member, so I was able to get into the expo. They actually only gave us like 30 minutes early.
No, and I was just going to say, I am not, so I can tell you for everybody who is not Club Run Disney, because there are more of us than there are of you.
Correct. So I did get that experience where I got to get in there early. I was able to do my shopping ahead of time. Jane is also like really, really, really good with virtual queues. Yes. Didn't you guys have a very low number? So you guys were not far behind us, to be honest.
We did. So the way that virtual queue worked for Disneyland, and I am a little bit familiar with Florida and how they've done it for Run Disney, but because of the way that the app is set up, like in Florida, you are connected to people. So you would say, okay, who's going? Jane is going, Patty's going, Megan's going, and you would select those people as part of your virtual queue. At Disneyland, you didn't. You just put in the total number of people that are going in your group. So it enabled us as a group that I was with for everybody to try to get the virtual queue and go with the lowest number. And we wound up with group 7. So I think between all of us, like one had gotten 7, one had gotten 11, and one had gotten, one had gotten group 95. All at the same time. And so we absolutely roasted the person that got group 95 because why are you not better at this? But as it turned out, it was really helpful because of the way Run Disney is and because of the way that Run Disney Disneyland is, there were a lot of people that were coming that we have known for years and years and years. And some people didn't understand virtual queues, or I didn't think I was going to be able to make it, and now I'm able to make it. And that enabled us to say, yes, I have one. Oh, you're here? I have one for group 93. Come on. I had friends that flew in that morning that weren't able to get into the virtual queue because they weren't within the 90-minute radius or something. But by the time that they had arrived on property, it was actually time for group 93. And we were like, screenshot, here you go, come on in. And that's exactly how we got them into the expo. So, I'm not usually a big fan of saying everybody should try for virtual queues because you take spots from other people. But sometimes it is really helpful. And I think that this was one of those cases where it was incredibly helpful. So,
as always, like, build your tribe, right? Like have friends, have, Run Disney as a community. And I think what, at least the secret to our success whenever we get into these races is a lot of like texting each other and the network that we've built of friends who have great connections and are able to get into the Run Disney queues, sooner than others. Like, I know that's really frustrating, but that's what I can tell you is reach out, try to find a team, find some buddies, work through that process because it really does help you get into these races and then into these expo situations. So this expo was held at the Disneyland Hotel. I stayed at the Disneyland Hotel. So for me, I actually went to the expo every single day of the expo, which I never do. At Walt Disney World, I go once. I never go back. I don't care who wants me to go back. I don't care who wants me to meet them over there. It's not happening. Like it's a hassle to get there. But because I was right there in the hotel, I was happy to just like pop downstairs and meet people, or to exchange things, or to take more pictures, or to do whatever it was that I wanted to do. Right. So I will tell you that if you are trying to determine on property versus off property, one thing that may factor in for you is by staying on property, in particular, the Disneyland Hotel. If you're an expo person, if you like to go back and forth, if you like to do a lot of shopping or exchanging or whatever it is, or you like that convenience, I will say that made a big difference for me. I absolutely know that if I had stayed where Jane stayed, I would have gone the one time and never gone back. Like, it just wouldn't have happened. So again, if you're an expo person, that could factor into your decision making on spending a little bit more money, or having that experience of staying at the Disneyland Hotel or the Grand California or the Paradise Pier. I had a friend who stayed at the Paradise Pier, and she gave me some feedback on that. Thanks, Mary Beth, for sharing all of this with us. One thing that she did note is that she felt that staying on property was not as important because of where the race start ended up being, which, when past races, the previous iteration of Run Disney Disneyland, you started and ended by these hotels, by the on-property hotels. So that was also one reason why I was like, why wouldn't I stay there? I'm going to stay there because it'll be close to the start, to the finish, to the expo, to everything. That has changed. It appears the new start line is elsewhere, which meant those of us that did stay at the Disneyland Hotel or any of the 3 Disney properties had a walk to get to the start, and then a walk back after the races. And we'll talk about the walk back, because I think that one was more problematic than we thought it would be, or we thought through it, didn't quite think through it. So I'm going to throw out the complaints that I've heard about that when we get there. But as far as like the expo is concerned, staying on property is your best bet, because it's easy for you to get your stuff, take it back to your hotel. You don't have to go all the way out and back in again if you're coming to the parks later. So that's just one thing to note, is like, I had somebody who requested, quotes to book, and they were like, I want to be close to the hotel, or close to the expo, and I want to be close to the start and finish.
Yeah, you don't. It's one or the other. You got
one or the other. You got to pick this time with this race. You got to pick. So yeah, that's the situation. The excellent news about Disneyland, and this is, I think Jane will agree, is like, you're within a 20-minute walk to all of this. 20 minutes max.
Yeah, and so to just kind of give everybody else the other experience, I stayed at the DoubleTree, which is Arn Harbor Drive, and it is over in the convention center, a little bit past the Hilton and the Marriott, which is what most people know at the convention center. So we were a little bit further out than I would normally stay, but the location for us was great. Now, we also had a car. So on the first day that we arrived, we went to the parks, and half of our group said they were going to walk from the hotel to the parks. Mm-hmm. And then the other half, myself, because I'm lazy, and my other friend, said we were going to take the Art Bus, which is the local bus. And it stopped right across the street. And that's exactly what we did. And we beat them with us leaving the room 5 minutes after them, waiting for the bus. By the time we got on the bus and got to Disneyland, we still beat them in the park from walking. Okay. Now they were like, the walk was great. They wanted to stretch their legs because we had flown in that morning, and listen, I respect everybody's right to do whatever, including mine to sit down. And so the walk really wasn't so bad. However, going to the expo, I think, would have been more, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously we were going directly to the parks, and then there's probably another half a mile from the parks walking to the Disneyland Hotel. So we did wind up driving the car over. And if I'm not mistaken, this is where it gets a little iffy. So we had a cast member with us, and they get free parking. So we actually wound up not paying for parking. We didn't know that until we got to the gate. So we were willing to pay for parking. But, and I believe on expo days, as long as you showed your expo pass, the parking was like $10 for you to park your
Yes,
car.
that's correct.
And it parked you in the Pixar Pals parking structure, which had signs, and it was very close to the expo. So if you stay off property and you have a car, I would definitely say just take that over, because if you Uber or Lyft, it's going to cost you $10 or $12 anyway to get from your hotel possibly to the expo. So so those are those options. And
that's just something really important to point out is at Disney World, going to the expo, you don't have to pay for parking at all. It's free parking.
Yeah.
At Disneyland, they're going to charge you. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is getting into the very big differences between Disney World and Disneyland. Part of it is, and people probably don't realize this. Part of this is just both theme parks are run by essentially different organizations. It's not one organization that happens to run both. They're separated. And so things that are done at Disneyland will not be done at Disney World. Things that are done at Disney World will not be done at Disneyland. If you're a Disney World person and you're coming to Disneyland, it can be so frustrating and stressful. Trust me, I don't disagree with you. The first time I went to Disneyland as an adult, it was after like multiple Disney World trips. And I literally spent the entire time complaining about how they don't do this at Walt Disney World. They don't do this at Walt Disney World. I got over that because I recognize the things that they do right and that Disneyland does do better. What outweighs it for me. And so I got over some of my issues. But just as a heads up, if that is where you're coming from, it is completely, totally normal for you not to show up at Disneyland and fall immediately in love, especially if you're going to play the comparison game, which is, I would tell you, try not to do that. Try to just think of them as two separate experiences that just happen to both have the name Disney in it. Like, for example, you wouldn't expect Disneyland Paris to be run the same way as Disney World, would you? No. It's kind of the same thing with Disneyland. Like it's just run a little bit differently, okay, for various reasons, but that is what it is. And I felt like, as it turned out, the runDisney experience fell along that same line of it's similar, but not the same. So the expo layout also changed from 2017. So if you are an old-time Disneyland person who's looking at running your first race back, things do look a little bit different the way they have it set up. And I actually like this better. I thought the setup worked. It was easy to follow, easy to understand. My only minor complaint was that there was only one exit out of the expo. So once you got into like get your t-shirts or you went to the expo part or whatever, you couldn't like come right back out the same door you came in. You had to walk all the way down and go and exit out through just this one exit door. I'm sure it made sense to somebody, but every single time it made me roll my eyes and go, ah, and I'd have to walk down and walk out. Anyway, that was it. The shirts were on an upper level, where in the past we used to have the shirts on a lower level.
Yes and no.
I thought in the past at Disneyland, we had to go down
get
our bib. And I thought we also got our shirts down there too.
It was. So we used to go down and get our bibs and shirts.
In the basement.
So now we don't do the basement.
Right.
But we have the upper and the lower. So technically of what we have though, the shirts were on the lower. That's why I was like, well, no, they're still on the lower level. It's just the lower level has moved.
Yes. It's not the basement level anymore. So it's similar to how Disney World, for any of you run Disney World people, you go and get your bib first, and then you go to another location to get your shirts. Same kind of feel, same kind of vibe, same kind of setup. I thought all of that spacing wise, like I never felt crowded. And again, I went like 4 different times maybe, to the expo with various people at different times of the day, different experiences. And I never stood in a line at Disneyland except for my entrance into the merchandise that I stood in a line for. But after that, I don't think I was ever in any lines at the Disneyland races at the expo.
Yeah, I will say I can't compare the lines to Florida because I won't go when the expos open here in Florida.
Yeah.
But we were there prior to the official open, knowing that our virtual queue group was low enough. So we were probably going to be in the first couple of minutes anyway. And when we had gone, I believe the expo opened at 10. We had gotten there probably around 20 to 10, and a line had already formed outside. Now, I will say these cast members, they were on it. They had us, they were like, if you are in groups 1 through 10, get in this line. If you are in anything greater than 10, get in this line. And then they started chunking us out into further and
Mm-hmm.
further groups so that as soon as they opened and they were like, groups 1 through 5, we were already in order for groups 1 through 5, you know. And so
Yeah.
for us, we were in group 7, we were in a spot. They were like, great, 6, you move up. And then they were like, 7, you move up. And so it was super, super organized. There was a gentleman that was walking the line and he was like, hey, let me help you. Like, the purpose of the virtual queue is so that you're not standing in line. And he's 100% right, right? That's why we have the virtual queue, but also for those of us who use virtual queues, we kind of know the timing of it. And so there is going to be some, all right, well, I'm not going to go do something because you're going to call my number in 3 minutes. So I'm going to stand here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that the line itself was managed pretty efficiently. And that to me was impressive. But again, I have nothing to compare it to because I won't do that here.
I also had an excellent line experience for the Club Run Disney situation. It kind of got messy and it was kind of confusing because the way it works for Club Run Disney is you show up, they check your ID to make sure that you are on their list, and then they give you a wristband, and then they tell you to stand in a line. This line was kind of funky. I don't know exactly how they were trying to set it up, but it wasn't a typical snake line. It was more like this was one line, and then instead of snaking it back around and back up, they were starting the next line from the start, you know, from the front and going back. So, but at some point there was a snake situation happening, and that wasn't supposed to be happening. Anywho, we had this fantastic cast member come over, and he, you know, big guy, made this big announcement and like just straightened us all out and got us like all lined up and just like took charge and took care of everything. And I was like, he knows what he's doing. He needs a. The cool thing is that I was already going to do a cast compliment for him because I love throwing those down in my app now. But I ran into him in the hallway talking to his boss, and I walked up and I was like, "Excuse me, are you his boss?" Can't remember the cast member's name anymore, but I was like, "Are you blah blah blah's boss?" And he was like, "I am." Why? And the guy was looking at me like, what I do.
He's like, right, this is the day I get fired.
Exactly. And I was like, I just want to tell you, I was like, I will put this like, you know, in writing for you, but also I want to tell you just, he's been fabulous this whole morning. And, you know, I got to like kind of brag on him. And the boss was like, tell me more. Like, what exactly did he do? And so I was actually able to like give him actual examples of what I was impressed by and what he did. And I'm telling you what, like it made that cast member smile so big. And I could tell like that meant a lot to him. So I'm just throwing this out there. If you ever run into a situation where you have the opportunity to like throw a kindness for a cast member, like absolutely do it. Even if it is the cast member compliments, which I know may sound like no big deal, but my understanding is it is a big deal on the back end. Like they match them up and they get patted on the back, you know, and so it's a thing. So you can do that through your app. But in this case, I was actually able to tell his boss like person to person. So that was exciting for me to let him know how happy I was about the lines, which is bizarro. But yeah, the lines were good. The lines were handled well for getting into this merch. Okay, so the expo was at Disneyland Hotel. If you were staying at Disneyland Hotel, Disney California Adventure, or Paradise Pier, getting back and forth to the expo was a walk. Like, I think it's 5 minutes from California, maybe 5 minutes from Paradise Pier, coming through the parking lot area. It's really a super easy walk to get back and forth for your expo. For the races, it's also a super easy walk if they continue to keep the 5K starting in Disneyland Park, like our experience was. Because, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, before we move on to the 5K, I do want to talk a little bit about the expo.
Okay.
And the difference between the Florida Expo versus the California Expo.
Okay.
For starters, there are
size.
no characters in the expo. So there are at Disneyland, they do a lot of backdrops. So there's a lot of backdrops to take photos. There actually were way more than I even got a chance to take photos with. I was very upset about that because my outfit was adorable and I wanted to go back and take pictures, but we had like so much going on. And then there was like a 17-hour lunch, and then we had to go home and get off our feet because running, which was getting in my way. But anyway, lots and lots of backdrops and places to take photos, and the lines were pretty manageable. Again, like, you know, a little wait, but nothing so crazy. But the size of the expo in general is also very small. So in the one ballroom, which it might actually be like two ballrooms that connect or something, you have your Run Disney merchandise section. So that's, you know, this kind of merch that says whatever, Disneyland weekend. And then in that same room is all your vendors. There's only a handful of vendors. It's not, you know,
that's true.
It's not 100 vendors. It's 20 vendors.
Yeah.
And the spaces are smaller. I'm, you know, ballparking numbers here. It is also in the same room that you get your shirts. So when you think about going to Disney World and the size of the room that we enter in the Jostin Center, which is where you get your shirts, and then we have that whole section for vendors, that is about the size of the whole room that would include Run Disney merch and shirts and vendors. And there is an enormous section in the middle that is a photo opportunity. So that's kind of like, when you think about it, it's like, that's kind of how we're sizing it down. So
that's that's an important thing to point out, is that I know also some people were disappointed in the vendors. Like there was like a hair curling station or something. And they were like, I wanted running stuff, not like that. So yes, there was the expo from the runner standpoint. I did hear some concerns, some complaints about that. I will say also the biggest thing was the characters not being available at this race weekend. There were definitely in Disneyland 2017 and beyond and before times, we didn't have characters then either, did we? So I don't know if that's a logistics in the sense of like, there's just no room for character lines, because even those backdrop lines didn't have a lot of availability for a big, long line.
Correct.
So you've got to remember that Disney World, they have a lot more land and a lot more building space to play with than what you get at Walt Disney or at Disneyland. Disneyland just is a smaller, compressed area. So that might be why there was no characters. It could also absolutely be like funding, like they just weren't willing to pay for the characters because, but I think that's something that would be a very good like feedback, hi, we would like characters to be available if at all possible. Now, personally, I'd rather see them on the race course or see them after the races, which we'll get to that as well. If we have to make choices. But it is nice, though. It would be nice if we had characters there for folks that like them, like we do.
My thing is, and what I do understand is, because it's in a hotel and because it's right on top of the parks, and we've seen this in Florida now that we've added characters, because again, we've been running this long enough that we didn't even used to get characters at the expo in Florida. Like that wasn't a thing. This is a very new thing. And more people are finding out about that and coming just to take those photos that may or may not be a part of the race weekend, or they are, but now the whole family's coming versus we talk about this in another video versus just the runner going or a couple people going. And so with the lack of space, I think that could cause some bottlenecking, maybe some safety issues. So I understand, but I think they did a really good job with providing multiple backdrops and places for you to take photos and be excited about the race weekend that's coming back. So
they did, and I liked all of those. I think I did take all of them, and I enjoyed. Well,
still mad.
that was what one of the things about me being there is I was able to cruise in and out, and there was no line. Or if there was a line, I backed out of it and I said I don't want to do it. And then later there would be no line, so I was able to pop in and get it done. So that was one of the perks about being in the location that I was in. That I did make a lot of expo trips that I wouldn't have made if I'd been on the other side. I just know I wouldn't have done it. Absolutely
Right.
not.
No. And I totally get it. Cause like we didn't go back. I mean, we had other things that we were doing, which was part of why we didn't. But my thing was by the time we got in and did the full shopping experience, which I normally don't do, right? So now I'm in there doing a full shopping experience, buying literally everything that they can slap a Disneyland logo on. And then picking up my bibs, taking a couple photos, picking up my shirts. Then it was lunchtime. I mean, we had one snafu and whatever. We had to deal with that. And then we had lunchtime. And first of all, there was no real place to get lunch with the exception of Tangaroa Terrace, which is right next to Trader Sam's. It was packed.
It was very busy, very busy.
So we had to leave to go to downtown Disney to get something to eat. And then at that point, we were already out of the expo. And so it was like, you're on to the next thing. And so for us, it was, let's go in because we wanted to do a couple things in the park before we went home to like rest and get ready for not walking.
Yeah. So visualize this, if you will. Over here is where the expo is and where the Disneyland Hotel is. In the middle is downtown Disney, and then the theme park entrances. And then on the other side, there is, and there's security here and there's security here. And then when you exit security on this end, you're on Harbor, which is this big long street that has tons of hotels for you to stay on. So just so you can kind of visualize, when you are coming from Jane's direction, if you were to walk, you walk down Harbor, you walk through security, then you walk all the way past the park entrances, all the way through downtown Disney to get to the expo, and then reverse that when you leave with all of your stuff. Okay, all of your goodies. So
we didn't.
You drove
because
it was a different situation, right? But most people don't bring cars to Disneyland. Most people don't. So this is for the walkers out there. So that's just like the visual of how this looks when you're trying to decide if you're going to stay like on the harbor side or if you're going to stay at more of the on property, on site hotels are just going to place you a lot closer. So your walk back and forth to the expo is less. Okay.
So, and I think the other thing to note is when you go to the expo and you purchase your merchandise, if you are staying at Grand California for sure, you have to go through security to get there. Actually, you technically could avoid it by going around. But guaranteed with the harbor hotels, if you are walking back with your purchases, you have to go through security. And that was massive.
Which is something I don't think anybody was like thinking it through.
Nobody thought about this.
Nobody thought about this.
They had to unwrap every mug, go through every bag, dig through every new purse, every whatever. And that security line, I mean, like I said, we walked through, it was like 1:00 heading back to Disney, downtown Disney, and it was ridiculous.
It was long because I met you guys for lunch and had to go through that line to get to where you were at lunch. And I was like, this line's huge. What is going on? And then it was like, oh, it's expo people. It was all the people that had bought all their stuff and they'd been shopping all day at the expo. And then they were trying to leave to get back to their hotel. So this is something with Disneyland that you've got to keep in mind. It's all a very walkable experience. You can walk. Again, maybe you're a mile between expo and if you're running Run Disney, you know, you can, if you're a Disney person, you know, you can handle an extra mile on your legs. It's no big deal. Like we do it all the time. It's about a mile, like between, you know, one or the other. But this, you got to go through the security and when you have all those bags, that's a problem. Not a problem. It's a hi, be aware of that's what's going to happen to you. You will have to plan for time or experience that. To
You
get away
can.
with that, if you don't want to do that, you can pick up an Uber outside of the Disneyland hotel and they'll pop you right around over to your hotel for $8 to $10. And that's an option for you if you just don't want to deal with the walk and or the security lines.
Yeah, and I would just say if you're staying in, I was gonna say Paradise Pier, but it's Pixar Pier Hotel now. And if you're staying at Pixar Pier or you're staying at the Grand California, I would not go through the downtown Disney security. Correct. And instead I would make the right at that little road there and it takes you through the back of the Pixar Pier Hotel. And then I would cross the street to get to the Grand California.
All right. So that's the expo experience. I think, Jane, we're good. We're going to move on to 5K now. Okay.
We are.
So the main thing you need to know about this 5K, and I've run 5Ks at Disneyland. I didn't run them all, but I ran quite a few of them. This was the first time I have started in a park. It's not the first time they've ever done it, but it's the first time I had that experience. I think they had done that a couple of times for the Tinkerbell 5K back when the Tinkerbell race was a thing. So this was new. Wasn't quite sure what to expect or what it was going to look like. Didn't know if there would actually be corrals or if it was going to be just like, first come, first serve, everybody like line up, whatever the deal was. What did you think about this experience of starting in the park?
I hated it.
Okay. I thought I was going to love it way more than I
Correct.
did. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it, but
I mean, like hate is a strong word, but like
I thought I would have a different feeling about it as well. I thought it was going to be magical and amazing to be standing there on Main Street, like in the hub when all this happened. No. But again, I come back to the makeup of the Disneyland hub. Depending on where you are standing, you are going to get blocked by these trees that are there, which I laugh because old school Disney Worlders will know that there used to be trees in the hub at Disney World. And people cried and gnashed their teeth and got so upset over those trees going away because it was so beautiful and blah, 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 which I have some gorgeous pictures of the trees at Disneyland, like popping off in the spring where like the colors come out and it is stunning. So I'm not like anti-tree at Disneyland, but I now can actually see why people complain about the trees. Because they were in the way. Like I couldn't see the castle. I couldn't see the stage where they were, talking about people. They had the characters come out and like they sent us off and whatever. I couldn't see any of that from where I was standing. And we were like fairly close up. It's not even like we were way, way in the back. But I felt like the same way where I was for yoga. I couldn't see like the main stage because of these trees. I'm not anti-tree. The trees can stay. They're lovely. I'm just telling you, like, I think that impacted my experience. Plus, we just have a smaller castle here. So again, you don't get that whole big, huge background. I agree. I didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to love it. I won't say I hated it, but I didn't love it. I did love having the bathroom like 10 steps away from me, a real bathroom. It always comes back to bathrooms. You know, I have problems. Always comes back to bathrooms. So the fact that I was able to go over and use the Plaza bathroom before the race started, I did love that 5K. So I appreciate you for that. So yeah.
I would have loved, they needed, and I understand that they're Disneyland and so they do things differently and they're not quite as big and large and all that good stuff, but like they needed a screen.
Yeah, they did. No, I agree.
They just needed a tall screen off to the side somewhere, some additional speaker, like something. Because I also heard that people that were in, like the corrals basically went around the hub. So you started in the section between it was like Tomorrowland and the Matterhorn is kind of where the start line was. And so the corrals went around the hub, but also down Main Street.
Yes.
And so I heard that if you were in one of the corrals that was further down Main Street, like you couldn't hear anything and you had no idea what was going on. And that's where I was like, okay, there has to be a better way. Because also, like to your point, we were further up. we also had no idea what was going on.
Mm-mm.
And I think like there was a point where Carissa was asking us all if we were happy that the races were back. We were excited, and no one answered her like 4 or 5 times. And it was both, I'm sure, frustrating and embarrassing for Carissa. But it was also because literally no one had any idea what was going on.
Yeah,
Like,
we couldn't hear, we couldn't follow along. It was kind of, yeah. Yeah.
it was very local 5K vibe is kind of what I was getting.
We had a balloon arch, you know, at the beginning, which was very cute and pretty. But yeah, like not a typical like Run Disney 5K that we are all used to. And that we used to, like, again, I ran 5Ks at Disneyland before that started out on the street, and we ran into the parks just like the starts of all the other races. And so this was a different vibe. Now, the one thing I will say that we did get that we did not used to get, because we were inside the park, they gave us fireworks. But again, they gave us fireworks like down Main Street first, and then they popped off behind the castle. So like I didn't know where to look because I
missed them.
And I missed them. Yeah. But we did get fireworks. Usually out in Anaheim, they don't do fireworks. Yeah. The cute little balloon arch.
Like this was the start line. It was a balloon arch. This is a balloon arch.
It's precious.
With a little sign. It's adorable. And you know, like it's a great balloon arch.
Different. It's just different. Okay. So like, again, your expectations are going to be different. Are they going to do the 5K for Halloween half starting in the parks again? We don't know yet. We don't know. These races are still so new. We have zero concept on if they're going to keep the exact same courses or if they're going to change things up. We can tell you that in the past, there were different 5K routes. There were different 10K routes. There were different half marathon routes. And each race weekend, you got a different one. They didn't reuse the same ones every single time. So that could happen again. However, 2017, a lot of handover, changeover, a lot of things have changed. They may just say, nope, these are our routes. These are our races. This is what we're sticking with. And these 2 race weekends are going to be run the exact same way. We don't know yet. We will have to TBD and decide what that situation is going to be. And of course, we plan on going to Halloween half marathon weekend because of course we are. I mean,
Halloween 365.
It's kind of our idea. we like to take credit for that.
We do.
Anyway, so the 5K starts here on Main Street. I think what I didn't like about it was there was no opportunity, to spread out. We were all just kind of like squished in, and it was exciting and whatever, but you really had to be careful because there were so many people so close, from the start. Like there was never any ability to like spread out. So didn't love that. I think it wasn't the worst thing in the entire world, but didn't love it.
Yeah. And I will say that, like, I know, look, all of the 5Ks and 10Ks, a lot of people, it's the same complaint that everybody has, right?
Yes.
Is there's no proof of time. People can start in the front that aren't quote unquote fast enough to start in the front. And so it's frustrating for those people who want to run super fast, and all of that is true. And it's a safety issue and whatever. Part of the challenge becomes when people stop for photos, because then everybody sort of winds up seating oddly anyway.
Correct.
But the Disney World start line is probably twice as wide as this start line. So imagine now you're in something that's half as narrow and it doesn't open up. And normally at the Disney World 5K, you get at least a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile before you hit a character stop. So people are just moving and sort of spreading out on the course. There is none of that. Right. You start this 5K, you are in the park, you are in a very narrow space. And I want to say a 1/4 mile in, first character stop.
Yes.
Boom, right there.
Yes.
Packed.
We
kept going.
Huge. Yeah, we did. We decided not, usually, 5Ks, we'll stop for every single one. We'll stand in all those long lines. We were like, we're going to just keep moving. So, we kept moving. What I did, the course itself, I don't really have any major complaints.
No, you're in the park the whole time.
You're in the park the whole time. You do get some behind the stage, situation. But I didn't have any major complaints about that. I did hear some people complained about it was too dark behind. And I can see that. I could see that. But I didn't have a problem with it. However, I might have just been in my little love bubble of I'm running Disneyland again. I don't care, like, situation that I wasn't being like real objective. But I have heard that complaint is that they did feel like it was just too dark behind off stage.
My complaint is the characters.
Okay. I was like, what characters? Oh, yes. This character,
Yes.
This one I did. Yeah, I will agree with you with this too. Yep.
And so this is, it's starting to become a pattern now. And it seemed like nobody loves a theme more than me. And nobody will take a theme to like literally the end of where it should be more than me. I am so tired of these themed character races and being told the themes on the day you show up.
Yes.
Because, so the theme for the 5K, Pluto was the mascot for our 5K. And so the theme wound up being Disney dogs. Well, we've already had a Disney Dogs 5K. We did it here a couple of years ago. Also, I don't really care for Disney dogs. No offense. I'm a big dog lover in real life. Don't care. I also know, like, if you had done Disney cats, all right, yeah, there's some cool cats, but like, I'm not a fan of like that one thing. And I feel like it just takes away from like what I expected, which of course is my own problem because the expectation is something that I put on myself. But I expected more classics. Disneyland to me is classics. When we say rare characters, I flat out said, all I want, and obviously this is always about me.
Obviously.
I want classic characters in new costumes. That's it. I just want Mickey in this costume and Minnie in that costume and Goofy. And the next day, I want you to do it again. New costumes. Yeah. Next day, do it again. New costumes. Do, villains or princesses or whatever, but like a mixture of all of that. And I felt like the 5K was the Disney dogs, and then the 10K wound up being Disney ducks. I was like, how many ducks are there? And I will tell you, I am tired of the McDucks, Scrooge McDuck, and the Launchpad McQuack. And I'm tired of them. We have had them for so long, and they used to be special. And I've gotten to the point where they're no longer special. And I'm like, come on, guys.
I still like them because, I'm not millennial, so I'm not attached to them. So I like them, but I'm also not attached to them. So I don't stop for them. Correct. So I still don't think I have any on-course duck, the Scrooge McDucks. I would have stopped, absolutely would have stopped for Huey, Dewey, and Louie though.
Correct. Same.
Right.
But like, they weren't out when we
went by, but I absolutely would have stopped for that one. And again, that's the 10K. So yes. So, but 5K in general, we run through the parks. We ended at outside of the Paradise Pier restaurant area, and again, like all of a sudden, there was another balloon arch, and we were done. Like it kind of took me by surprise.
It was weird.
It was really weird, right? And we were not prepared. I wasn't prepared for that. The only reason I knew that it was the finish was because you ran ahead of me. Jane and I were wearing.
I did.
Yes. We were wearing Taylor Swift themed outfits, the 22, if you guys are aware of the Eras Tour and her video, but the Eras Tour where she takes her 22 hat and she gives it to somebody.
Oh, I did do that.
Yeah. And she gives it to somebody during the course of the event. Well, when we rounded this corner that, again, I didn't even realize we were at the finish line, Jane all of a sudden is skipping forward and taking her hat, and she's putting it on somebody who it took me a few seconds to connect that, oh, it was Carissa, and I'm so sorry, Carissa and her announcing partner.
Yes, I have to look it up because I have it.
I want to say Nate, but I don't even think that's
it's
correct.
It's not, no.
Okay. So Jane's putting the hat on him, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. And I was like, wait a minute, I have a hat. So I took my hat off and I put it on Carissa, which Carissa's a Swiftie. So she loved that. And Correct. She actually had us take a selfie. We did a selfie with her and she was wearing the hat. So yeah, it was really cute. But that was but it was completely, I would not have even paid any attention except that you heard them say something about Swifties or say something about, I don't know what they said, but you
They
clued
saw
in.
our shirts,
Okay.
and she loved that our shirts were both Run Disney and Taylor Swift themed.
Yeah.
So she made a comment, and so yes, I ran forward to give my hat as
Yes.
Taylor Swift does.
Yes, yes, yes. Look, if you don't like Taylor Swift, then we are not the podcast for you. Anywho, so that was, I liked it. I didn't have, my only massive complaint is, yes, the theming of all the characters. Wasn't a fan of all of that. But the rest of it, I honestly was one of those people who, I apologize if you felt like you were being told all the time to just be thankful to be there. Well,
Yeah.
I was happily embracing that vibe. I was just so happy to be there that even the things I didn't love about it, I don't care. Let's do it again tomorrow.
Yeah. And that's the thing,
care.
is like, there's not everything that I love about Florida either.
No.
And I choose not, I definitely run Florida a whole lot less, but I also live here. So like it changes everything for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit that. But nothing is ever perfect, but there are certain things that it's like, I am willing to take a less impressive race experience just to be able to do it there.
Yeah,
that's
I
the
agree.
reality of it.
I agree. I'll admit that as well.
Yep.
That is not necessarily the answer for everybody. And so for all of those folks who are just like, oh no, it wasn't worth it to me. Cool. Like we're not
Disney
saying
World has a lot of other
races
things that they really offer. So
it's perfect for you. Keep doing Disney World, and bless you for that. And like zero issues with that. But for us, this was great.
Yeah, so I do want to mention that for the 5K, again, stayed off property. We drove in for the 5K, and when you drive in for the 5K, because it started in the parks, they park you at Mickey and Friends. The parking, even though you are a runner, the parking is $35. It is standard park day parking fee. You are permitted to leave and then bring your receipt back later, so that if you wanted to run the race and then go to your car and leave and shower and then come back later, you can come back later and not pay that fee twice. But just kind of a heads up there, you're parking at Mickey and Friends. I will say that, almost nobody in the parking lot when we got there, very few people. I'm guessing all locals. And it was very easy. We went right through security. They did have the trams running, so you're not walking from Mickey and Friends, which kind of cut that off. And then also when you leave, it was very, very easy for us to get back to the car, because we exited the park at the front and then we just hopped right on a tram and we were back at our car very easily. Now, for the 10K, the 10K and a half did start at another location. So they start in what is known as the Pumbaa Cast parking lot, which is behind the Anaheim Hotel, the Grand Legacy. It's behind these group of hotels off of Harbor Drive. So it's in between, I think it was Catella and Disney Way. Like,
or
Disney Way was the actual start line.
Yes.
So in that parking area, if you were driving in, we drove in actually both days for both the 10K and the half. 10K because we were going to breakfast, and the half because, again, we had a cast member with us. We didn't have to pay to park, and it was cold, and we were like, we will park here and sit in our warm car. That parking, they parked you at the Toy Story lot. So the other great thing to know, if you do have access to a car and will park, is there is a bathroom in the Toy Story lot, a real bathroom. So it was cool that we were able to like arrive, sit, get situated, hit bathrooms before you head over to the start line and porta potties, because the security getting in, again, very different than Florida. Lots of lines, lots of waiting, and lots of walking in a very small, like, the fact that they're able to still find like a mile and a half worth of walking before a race in a race area that is like one city block. I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you do it, Disney?
That is something to like point out. So Jane drove and parked and whatever. I came all the way from the Disneyland Hotel, walked through security right in front of the Disneyland Hotel to go through downtown Disney, walked all the way through downtown Disney, exited that security on the other side, walked across the street, and they had you go across harbor, and right around the corner was where they had the lineup started. It was like between the Tropicana and I can't remember what the other hotel was, but the Tropicana was one of the hotels where you walked in front of. And you walked back there to go through security again to get to the race situation. Now, there's no other way. You're going to have to do security to
It's
get
one
to
or
the
the
race,
other.
one way or the
Yeah.
other. And if you're coming from the Disneyland properties, you are either going to go through downtown Disney and go through security twice, the once to go through downtown Disney and then again to get into your race corral area, or Mary Beth, who stayed at the Paradise Pier, she recommended you just walk down
Catella.
yes, to Disneyland Way there was another entrance on Clementine. And
So
she said
that was the
that's
entrance
the
we
entrance that
took.
she went in. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the entrance we took. That's the entrance that they took us from the Toy Story lot.
Mm-hmm.
So Toy Story lot would dump you out on Catella, and then it basically was right next to kind of like where Cheesecake Factory was. We know because we ate there one of the nights before the races. There was that Clementine entrance, and you would come up there, and there was probably 10 security entrances or whatever. But I mean, the lines were still long, and
Yeah.
they were still still the old fashioned
Their hand going through a bag
security.
that you bring. So keep that in mind. If you're coming to any of these Disneyland races, they do not have the fancy schmancy screeners, but they were still screening you as you walked through. They were going through your bags. They were doing all of that. So if you're on property and you go through downtown Disney, you're going to go through security twice. And then if you are off property, you should only have to go through it once. As long as you're not trying to go through downtown Disney, you will only go through it once. The first security that I went through was easy peasy. We just breezed right through. The second security line, once I got over to the race, there was a lot more people getting into the corrals. Jane was already in the corrals there, so I got in and I was able to wave to her from the back of the corral, and I was like, I can run, you can't. So once this race starts, I'll just run to catch up to you, and we'll be together again very shortly. So that's what we did. That's how we started our race. Again, to some of the differences, the start of this 10K race, again, a smaller footprint, smaller like stage area where the DJ was and everything. It was actually adorable, but it was very small. The corrals were tiny. The corrals were just these little itty bitty things. I think they ran out of room. I read of somebody who was in B Corral for the half marathon. She said that they ran out of room, like they couldn't get into the corral when it was getting started. So that's a problem. They're going to have to adjust these things as these races go on. Maybe reevaluate how the setup exactly looks. We'll have to see how they respond, or if they change anything. There were no characters pre or post race at the Disneyland 10K or Disneyland Half Marathon. Yep, which we all agree we have now become spoiled and we really like those. But something to remember, and I don't know that we will get them.
Look at this cutesy little stage,
Oh, it
but
was
like
adorable.
so tiny.
It was really cute. It was really cute. The one thing to remember is I think that if Disneyland holds to this lore, this theory, this pixie dustness, that parking lot is off property. It is just in Anaheim. Anaheim does not have the magical ability to have the Disney characters come to life like being on property does. So we may not ever get characters in there. Now, that being said, there were characters at the finish line. Like as we went through, we saw Donald and Daisy. So they do exist at the finish, but they weren't there for us to take pictures with. So that's something that I hope that everybody that did those runner surveys, or if you want to email Run Disney and request it, I think there was space in the layout of the setup that they absolutely could have a couple of characters. They could have 4 characters. I think they have the space for it. But they chose not to. They did not. We wish.
Yeah, I think the challenge for certainly the 10K day was that the kids races were on the same day as the 10K. And so the kids races were already set up in that area for them to start. Now, once the kids races are over, I think they could clear that space. And then for the morning of the half marathon, they could absolutely put the characters over there.
Well, they could have put the characters over there even with the kids races set up. Like it wasn't closed off. Like I could walk in and take pictures and stuff. So it's not like they were telling me this is secure and you can't be over here.
Oh, I thought it was gated off in the morning. So maybe at the end of the day it wasn't.
I went over there
because it was opening.
Yeah, because it was opening, I guess. But anyway, yeah, that would be something that I think that they could work through if they wanted to. If he wanted to, he would. So if they wanted to, they would. It's definitely something that East Coast Run Disney people have come to love. We expected it, and then it wasn't there. I didn't really expect it because I didn't think that far forward. But yeah, it was never there before in the past. So I think that's also why I was like, oh yeah, well, of course it's not here. It wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect it either.
Yeah, it just wasn't a thing. But would it be nice to have 100%? Would it increase like your value of the races? 100%. So out where we started, no fireworks. We also didn't have a wave start. They just let Olive Corral A go, Olive Corral B go, Olive Corral C. So there was no mini waves. I think we prefer mini waves. What did you think?
I personally don't have a feeling one way or the other.
Okay.
Having done it
both
days, the start line there is a little bit more narrow than Florida, but not quite as narrow as that 5K start, or at least it didn't feel that way. And it is opening onto road. You know, you are going out on Disney Way. You are hanging a left down Harbor, which is wide.
Yes.
And then you are hanging a right on Coachella, which is wide. And so on both of those courses, they start exactly the same. The 10K and the half started exactly the same. And you were able to spread out.
It's true.
Pretty much in the first, like after the first, I would say quarter mile, once you hit Harbor, it was wide enough that everybody was able to do what they needed. As a walker, I was way over to the right and I was fine over to the right. And there was plenty of room on the left for runners to run by. So I would say that
the waves aren't necessarily as needed.
Yeah, it feels crammed that first quarter mile. Yeah. And so like, I mean, I'm not supposed to run, but did I run that first? Yeah, I absolutely ran that first quarter mile. I'm fine. Because yeah, that part was definitely crammed and there were people running up the sides. And so for that, I would say maybe the wave starts would help. And maybe it was worse further back. I'm not really sure, but certainly by the time you hit Harbor, it was like wide open, great. Have a great day.
I agree. I didn't, yeah. I felt like that was what I think I missed with the 5K. Like, that's what I was kind of like, this is actually really nice when we get a little space so that the runners can like take off and go do their thing. The slower walkers or the slower runners can like whatever. So yeah, I agree with you there.
And the other thing is, because the first mile, it is the first mile because you hit the first mile marker as you're turning into the back of DCA.
Yeah.
And because that first mile marker has no characters, no whatever, it is all make your own fun.
Exactly.
It opens up the course. When you have run 20 feet and hit a character, it bottlenecks the entire course.
It really doesn't. And when those people get out of the line, they try to join a whole bunch of other people. It's a mess.
Right.
So yes,
It is
giving
a mess.
this giving a good mile without any characters or any reason for you to stop is the smartest move that they can make. It just really opens things up.
Plus, you get to pass the 7-Eleven, and I have a love affair with that 7-Eleven. It saved me in 2017. I almost stopped to get hot chocolate on the half this year because I don't know if anybody else is talking about it, but Anaheim was cold. Cold, guys.
This is like my 5K. I was frozen. It took me all day to warm up from that 5K, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I run cold anyway, and I've been having like temperature regulation issues lately. I was a popsicle. It was awful. I had zero interest. I had a big puffy coat that I threw in last minute, and I wore that sucker every single freaking day because I was cold. So yes. It was cold. It was
throwaways that never got thrown away.
Never got thrown away. I will say the 10K was the warmest day because I put on that coat and then I took it off and said, I'll just suck it up. I'll just deal with it. I was fine on the 10K, where the 5K, I was frozen the entire race. The 10K, I felt good. So
I personally was fine as soon as we got started moving.
Yeah.
But on the 10K, I never warmed up to a temperature to shed layers. Like I was like, I'm comfortable.
I never
shed.
Yeah, I kept everything
the half, and on the half, I thought it would be the same as the 10K, and it actually wound up being a little bit warmer the day of the half. So I needed to shed layers by mile 3 on the half, and that's another fun story.
So the 10K course, the first mile outside the park, which as we've discussed, we loved because like spread people out. It spread us out. It made everybody happy. Like I can't see how you could hate this. And then we got backstage of DCA and ran through DCA, exited DCA, went across the Esplanade, went down Main Street, circled around, whatever. We went through, did we go through the castle? Did we go through the castle? I don't even remember.
We did. You go through the castle, but you go through the castle from the front to the back. So you go hub to Fantasyland, whereas in the half, you go Fantasyland to the hub.
Okay. So we did that. And then we ended up exiting out the back again, getting some behind the stage. And then you end up on the street where you finish. Okay. So that's just to give you a quick visual. If you're a Disneyland person, you know, both of the parks are very close together like this. And you have this like football field size esplanade in between that connects them. So we ran across that esplanade to get between the two parks. I have run every single, and I think you have to, no, you haven't, but I have run every single 10K race at Disneyland since the 10Ks started running. And this is absolutely my favorite 10K layout that they have ever done. I have no notes. I loved it so. Oh, I take that back. I have one note. I loved it so much. I loved where we got to run. I loved the things we got to see. I agree with you, though. I did not love the characters. And I do feel like they could have put a couple of more characters, like one or two more on this course. So yeah, I hear people when they complain that there wasn't enough characters or they didn't think there were enough characters, wherever. I agree with you. I would like to see one or two more. Again, I think this might just have been the first time that out the gate and they weren't sure how things were going to be set up. I have also heard people complained that cast members in the park kind of like yelled at them if they pulled off to the side of the course to try to take a picture of something. They were kind of being told like, do not do that, or you don't step foot off the course or whatever. And I want to say to that I think this is just something that you have to recognize. These people have never run Disney before. They are probably not, there's probably not a single person left in Run Disney from 2017. So this is all new to them. They've probably not had any experience over on the Disney World side of things. So they have no concept that like that's what we want to do is like just step over and take a quick picture of this or that, or a quick selfie of this or that. I hope that will mellow over time and you won't feel like you're being yelled at. That's my hope, is once they kind of get a feel for how these things run and how the vibe should be, that maybe people will chill out. But I did see that complaint a couple of times where people just felt like the cast members on the course were kind of like mean to them. And I was like, I didn't have that experience, but I've heard that. We actually had a really great cast member.
I was just looking for her name.
Yeah.
And I don't have it in my phone, but I was like, that's because we immediately gave her a cast compliment.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. We pulled over on the side of the race and sent in a cast compliment because she was so great. We had this fantastic cast member who took this incredible picture of Jane and I in our costumes because they were very niche. And she understood the assignment 100,000%. Like she just took a great photo. She was literally in the middle of the race course, down on the ground, taking this picture for us. So
well, we were the silhouette shop.
We were.
And this is at the silhouette shop. But like, look at those lights. She got like the beauty of Main Street.
Yeah, she was really
just
great.
The best.
She was the best. She was fantastic. Yeah, so that just was like luck of the draw that we happened to have a really great the cast member worked that out for us. The biggest complaint that I will give for this 10K that they have to fix this. I don't care how they fix this, but that water stop immediately on Main Street was dumb and ruined the vibe. You want to come onto Main Street and like run down Main Street. And it was like exciting that it was there and whatever. And instead, like it was immediately like you came through that little, hub thing and all of a sudden you were stopping for water. And then people were tossing their water all along Main Street. I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. Not a fan of that at all. My other big issue with both the 10K and the 5K that I ran, not nearly enough photographers.
Not nearly as many qualified photographers. So not only do they not exist, but the ones we have, I have to imagine that they've never taken a photo of anything in their entire lives. When I tell you,
I wouldn't go that far, but I would say they definitely don't know action shots. They are not taking pictures of people moving ever.
These photos were trash, absolute trash.
Mm-hmm.
Like I go through my photos and like we always buy photo pass for like the week or whatever because we just love to take photos. And all of my photos, and I like if you can see here, this is like I just have endless amounts of photos. None of these are photo pass. All of my favorite photos for the weekend are photos that we took ourselves or this one lovely cast member who happened to be on Main Street took of us, or other people took photos of us, especially at character stops, because you may or may not have had a photo pass photographer. But like none of my photos from the actual race are worth anything. They're horrible.
I don't disagree.
Oh, with the exception of my finish line photos. That's it. Finish line photos, okay. Everything else, garbage.
Yeah. They were absolutely disappointing. I definitely feel like there were honestly like only 2, maybe 3 opportunities to get on course for the 5K or the 10K. Like there weren't very many options. They didn't have them out, but then they had one over here and one over here. And those photographers were only tip run along the sides when you see the photos. Otherwise, if you're in the middle, you didn't get pictures or you got cut off or because I had a friend that was running like down the middle. She didn't get like anything. All we got was like portions of her because those photographers were not catching the middle runners. So photos were bad.
They also took all of their photos vertical.
Yeah.
So every photo was a vertical shot. And like, so for instance, there were Patty, myself, and then 2 other friends, and we were coming up to a photo and we were like, great, they're going to get a photo. We all actually matched. So fabulous. In Florida, it absolutely would have been like snap, go, and whatever. we have probably 10 photos of us coming because they took a lot. But one of them is just of one person with an arm, and the next one is the second person with half this person and an arm of that person, and then there's like,
and it's
y'all could have
obvious
just taken
we're a
one
group.
photo.
Yeah, it's obvious we're a group, and we were lined up to take the picture as a group, and instead they like zeroed in on each of us instead of
correct.
And if I was on the end, which was closest to the middle of the, so I didn't even get a good pic. They didn't even get a good picture of me, which is fine. Ridiculous. But I'm just saying, like it was a group shot. Like we're not novices when it comes to taking race photos. Like we know how to like stagger ourselves and how to like do all this.
Right.
That did not work out. These race pictures were terrible.
Well, and it's also that like, even if you're not together as a group, if you're taking them wide, which my issue is, and listen, I am not a professional photographer, but I am very serious about my photos. And everything was zoomed in. Mm-hmm. And so the biggest thing that I always learned, my parents were professional photographers. And so I always learned from them, shoot wide. You can always crop in. You can't crop out. So they weren't shooting wide. They were shooting this, mm-hmm. tight. And so like photos we were getting was cutting off the beauty of running in Disneyland. Correct. I don't need a photo of my adorable costume and my face. I have 100 of those. What I need is a photo of my adorable self with Main Street behind me.
1000%.
Cut Main Street off because they just wanted to be like, here you are. And that's why I was like, guys, you're missing the whole point.
Yeah.
You're missing the whole point with like, there's no photos of Main Street. I mean, don't get me started with the fact that I do not have castle photos. I know for a fact they took them. Mm-hmm. He waved me. He was like, yes, click, 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 click. I was in a pack at the half coming through the castle, and there was actually one runner trying to like barrel through. And I was like, dude, take the L. Like it is a cluster coming through this castle. Like chill out. You're going to lose 11 seconds off your race time. But no castle photos, none. I asked PhotoPass to find me. I gave them a time, whatever. And they said, we're sorry. Our equipment went down. So you don't get your castle photo. So, I mean, great for everybody else. Cause a lot of my friends have great castle mm-hmm. photos. I do not.
You don't.
And so like my half photos are literally one photo of me with a black background, which might be Main Street. It might be Galaxy's Edge. I don't know.
Who's to know?
Hell.
Yeah.
And then my finish line photos, and that's it. And the reason that I bring this up, and I'm super passionate about it, and by passionate, I mean I'm really annoyed, is because the Halloween half is coming. They are including your race photos. And I think the reason they are including these photos is because it doesn't incentivize them to make them better. So Disney, if you are listening, do better.
Y'all need to do better. Yeah. Like the photos are a big deal. Like, and to Jane just gave you exactly why. Like we want the experience in our photo. Right. And so
I could be running at any local 5K at 5 a.m. where it's just dark with nothing
Correct.
behind me.
Correct.
Like, and I could be wearing whatever costume because I will wear those crazy costumes. It doesn't matter where I'm going.
Right.
But like, I want to know when you're in Florida, you want Spaceship Earth behind you mm-hmm. so that people know that you ran through Epcot. You want that castle behind you so that people know, like, and it's literally black darkness with like a tree. I'm like, cool. I could be in Arizona and you'd have no idea.
Yeah, wasn't a fan of that. Definitely not a fan of that. But the course itself, I was a big fan of. I loved the course. As I mentioned before, I actually ran this one. What basically happens when you're with Jane and she's on her, she starts walking. My little legs just can't keep up. Like, I don't know if it's, I'm a slower walker. I can run. And I can actually do a pretty decent pace in running. So it's not that. It's just that, like, we're out here having for the vibes. Like, we've always been like, we're more about the experience. And so we don't really rush through these races. We're not running for time. We are not those people to do that. We are literally there to like hang out at Disneyland in the middle of the morning and take all our pictures in costumes and take all our pictures. But Jane to her credit, like she had Dumbo Dare on the line. She wanted to finish, and she wanted to finish so that she could get off of her feet as soon as she could. And so we had agreed that we weren't going to like stop and stand in any super long character lines. We were just going to keep moving. So when you tell Jane to keep moving, she plugs in and she keeps moving.
Sorry.
Again, I mean, I'm not saying like she's like crazy legs fast or anything, but
I'm not.
I just could not keep up. And so it got to a point where I was like struggling to keep the walks. And I was like, I can't walk with you anymore. I have to run. And she was just like, who are you? What are you doing? Okay. And I was like, I'll wait for you up there. Like, I'm not, because I wasn't, again, not running to be fast, not running for time. Just literally, I couldn't hang where she was pace wise. So I had to run ahead. So I'd run ahead and then I'd stop. She'd come just walking right up to me and I'd be like, okay. And then I'd run again and then, stop and whatever. So I ended up running probably about half of that race, not the full race by any means, but took me about half the race to be like, I can't stick with you guys. I just can't do it. So I had to like run ahead. Plus, of course, I had to run ahead to find a bathroom because, of course, I did. But we ended up doing like very much the choose your own adventure, make your own fun race experience, which I think we had a blast. We got a lot of cute pictures, regardless of the PhotoPass fails. So it turned out.
No, and that's the big thing is like when I go through my pictures, for the most part, like the 10K, like I have so many pictures from the 10K.
Yeah.
And we only waited in, I think, one line for Abby, whatever her name is, that I never need to see
Mallard.
again. And sure. But we took a ton of photos on course that are just make your own fun, and I think that everyone relies on Disney and the characters, and obviously that's what we're paying for. So like, please give us more of the thing that we're paying for, but don't be afraid to make your own fun.
Absolutely.
And like, we stopped and took the photo in the teacups and stopped and took photos in front of the carousel and in front of the Dumbo ride. And these were not official stops.
Pulling the sword out of the stone.
The sword. Yep.
Yeah.
Make your own fun.
Make your own fun. That's absolutely, it's absolutely an option, and it is so great. Selfies everywhere. Throw them up. So yeah, no, it was good. I also liked when we were backstage, they did have like some of the parade floats, which we believe in parade superiority at Disneyland. Yes. So that was fun to see some of our favorite parade floats. And
none of which were paint the night. I'm just letting you know.
I know, which we would really like that one to come back sooner rather than later. And then, so the finish, I will say that this was multiple levels for me. First of all, I did not want to run this 10K. I probably tried 6 different ways to get out of running this 10K.
Correct.
I did not want to do it. Excuse me. Jane said, shut up, it's 10K at Disneyland. What's not to love? So
I was not wrong.
You were not wrong. As in most things, you tend to be right. And I loved this race. It was absolutely my favorite 10K race that I have run. There's two races that stand out for me from the 10K. One of them is here at Disneyland. There was another that was a Princess Half Marathon 10K that I, again, like, didn't want to run at all. Wasn't planning, just like tried to get out of it in every single way I could. Ended up running that entire one when I was not planning to run anything, and loved it so much. That's what happened with this race too. So maybe my answer is I should just like run more. I don't know. Maybe
I think it's that you should continue to hate running, because then when you show up, then you're like, oh my God, I love it. Exactly. I think when you love running, then you're like, oh, now I have expectations that I love it and I don't. So.
Maybe that's it. So the magic at Disneyland totally swept me up as we finished the race and we exited onto the street. We exited out on the street at the spot that Jane's mom used to cheer for us. And I burst into tears. I literally had tears in my eyes, and I was just so grateful that we had Disneyland races back. And it made me think of Jane, and it made me think of her mom, and it made me think of the runDisney community, because, if you ever saw the random stranger sign. If you got to see it when Peggy Sue held it up, like, like this is all part of the community and it's all part of our lore as a group. And so I had a moment there where I was just like, Jane, we did it. Oh my gosh, and she was just like, of course we did. Shut up, girl. I still have half a marathon to do. I have a half marathon tomorrow to do. And I was like, all right, let's go finish. So we did. We finished. I finished the thing, but it really was a big like boost to me, and I felt good, and I felt super happy about being back and having that experience. So for me, this is one of my top 3 race experiences ever. Absolutely enjoyed 90% of what I experienced, and I am so excited to repeat the 10K because yes, I'm going to sign up for the 10K at the Halloween half marathon. It'll be slightly warmer, but that's okay. I can handle warmth. I was just so cold. These races were just so cold, but I can't. Yeah, but can't wait for that one. Yeah, and then finished. Found my friend Alicia, talked to her, walked back with her. I did what was probably the smartest thing that I've done in a really long time, without really meaning to be smart. I was really just being lazy, but it was smart. When I left Alicia, she was staying on Harbor, so she went off to her hotel. I walked across the street and paused for a minute, and instead of going through security to walk back to my Disneyland hotel, I went ahead and peeled off to the left and ordered myself an Uber. Cost me $8. Had a lovely conversation with my Uber driver. She drove me around. She talked about the races because she was like, I'm actually here for the races. Like, I normally don't start running. She's like, I don't start driving till like noon or 1 o'clock, but I heard that you guys like all have these crazy costumes, and like I wanted to see the vibe. And she was like, this is so cool. This is so fun. So we like had this whole conversation about the race. So she was down for it too. I was like, come back tomorrow early because the half marathon runners will be out and they are definitely going to be wanting Ubers. And she was just like, oh yeah, I'll be here. But I took this Uber back. Now, what I unintentionally ended up doing was I unintentionally saved myself what sounds like a nightmare for security.
Yep.
What runners who were staying on property were running into is you would walk through downtown Disney security at the same time as park goers who are trying to go into the park. On any given day that you're trying to go through security, say 30 minutes to an hour before the park opens, that security line can get backed up, big time backed up, especially on the Harbor side. I heard, picture it if you will, you've got your medal, you've got your like 3 bottles of water, you've got your snack box, you've got your Mylar that you're trying to save for the next day because you know you're running the half marathon the next day and you're going to be freezing cold. You've got maybe your throwaways, maybe you got a jacket, I don't know, but you got all your stuff, right? And you walk up and you have to stand in line for security. Then you have to set all the stuff down. They have to go through all this, like repeat for every single runner plus every single park goer. I'm still not mad that I'm not mad at all that I stayed at Disneyland Hotel. I had a great stay and I had a great choice. It was a good choice for me, but I will say this for anybody, one of 2 things need to happen. Either you need to just take the long way around, like we talked about, go down Catella instead, or get an Uber and get a ride back so that you don't have to do this, or be prepared to stand in line to up to 30 minutes. I've seen reports, depending on when you finished your race and when you were trying to get through, that security line was a good 30 minutes line. And it was just a pain in the ass because you had all the stuff and there's not like a bag to put all this stuff in to set the bag down and for them to go through it. So you had to pick, it's just a lot of stuff, right? So that's one negative. Somebody else said there should be a runners only security line.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I think it would be a great idea. It would be a good option to streamline, what they're looking for and what's going through those lines.
or even just hotel guests, right?
Yeah.
It should just be hotel guests
Yep.
because, at that hour, if you're coming back with hotel guests, it can just be like, go up here because they know what you're doing. You're trying to get to the hotel.
Yeah.
Yes, they still have to check you. It doesn't change the security,
Yeah.
but it certainly would mean that like, hey, you guys come over here and we're kind of going to try to roll you through maybe a little bit faster because we're not going through your strollers and your coolers and everything for the day. So.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be a big tip, a big key to lower the frustration, and also Disneyland to ensure that your hotels continue to be sold out for these race weekends, which is kind of your whole point. Otherwise,
they'll sell out regardless. Let's be honest.
People are going to be looking for the cheaper option by a lot. Like I'm talking like you could have saved $1,500 to $2,000 staying off-site, which was actually closer to the race. Easily. So and listen, there's tons of off-site options to do. I love the off-site options. I don't have any negative to that, but I also just kind of like being bougie in my old age as I've gotten older. I really like staying on property. So
I love being bougie. But we were not, we were like, hey, we want to be bougie, but we also want to save money. And so that was how we wound up off property. And it really worked out because like, even for the cost of the car, cost of gas, even if we had wound up paying for parking, we still would have saved money.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
It's just some trips we'll spend the money and some trips we won't.
Yep. So if you're looking at this and you're trying to decide what you want to do for Halloween half or the Disneyland half next year, just be honest with yourself what you need in a hotel and then consider these logistics as well. The negative with the Anaheim direct area, there's only probably 2 or 3 like nice-ish hotels. The rest are fine. They're just more kind of motel-y feeling than they are hotel-y feeling. And depending on what you're used to, if you are a Disneyland Deluxe hardcore person, I would just advise you to like consider something like the JW or the Westin if you're trying to save money, or just stay on site because that's going to make you happier from a standpoint of your hotel, your lodgings. If you really are a more budget conscious, or it doesn't matter, it's just a place to lay my head, I just need it to be clean. Plenty of great options to fit all the budgets. So yeah. And I would also tell you, book now, don't wait until you get your bibs, because once those bibs go on sale, prices will skyrocket. So go ahead and like figure out what you think you might want. I have a link. I always have a link. It's going to be in show notes of different locations for you to check out and to look at, to consider. Just go ahead and do that sooner than later. Okay. We are going to talk about Jane's half marathon experience.
Yep. This is now the longest podcast we've ever done.
We're going to give it one more break and then we're going to come back to talk about that. Okay. 1:44. Yeah. Rob just walked in and like rolled his eyes at me and walked out.
He was like, why are you still talking about this?
I know. I just heard him go get in the shower. So he's fine. I'm like, what do you care? You're fine. I just want to write down the time. 1:40. My pens aren't working. 1:40. God damn it. Seriously? Okay.
I texted you.
Thank you, because I'm like, what the fuck? Okay. So Jane, I did not do the half marathon. In the past, what we loved about the half marathon, what I loved about the half marathon was you'd party in the front and you'd have your business in the back, meaning that you go through the parks all up front. You get whatever pictures, whatever selfies, whatever fun, fluffiness, like waste your time, whatever you need to do, all preloaded. We get that out of the way. And then once you get on the streets of Anaheim, you could like zero in, set your sights, and start running and do like the business portion of the event. In the past, there was quite a few volunteer opportunities where different groups would come out. Like there was, cheer groups, there was bands, there was car groups. There were cosplayers. There was all kinds of entertainment on the streets of Anaheim. I hear you did not get nearly the entertainment that we once did with this race. And I think part of that could have to do with back in like 2015 or 2016. It was somewhere around there. Might have been right around 2016. Disney was sued. There was this big lawsuit about volunteers who were getting paid in tickets to come into the park after they volunteered on these races. And now Disney has to pay them real cash money. They can't give them tickets to come into the races. So I'm wondering if that might have impacted how many community groups were willing to come out and how many community groups Disney was willing to pay since they now actually have to cut them a check versus before they were just like, see Steve afterwards and he'll give you your tickets to go into the park, right? Well, that's no longer an option. Now Steve needs your social security number and you'll get a 1099 at the end of the year for the money we're about to, send you to your direct deposit. So it's just things changed. And I think that was a big negative for a lot of people who expected more out of a Disney race. Like they felt it was just an Anaheim race. What are your thoughts on the half marathon experience?
It wasn't very different than it used to be. I
Okay.
think everybody's expectations have changed a lot since 2017.
Okay.
As a whole, the Run Disney community has changed.
It absolutely has. Yep.
Having been a part of it for as long as we have, the expectations have certainly gone up in the last few years. And I think even for the people that have ran it before, like, listen, was it exactly the same as it used to be? No. And there were a couple of less things that we saw on course. Like I can think of bands, like there were some dancers we used to see that we didn't see, the Red Hat Ladies. But I didn't feel that this was very much different than the old races, with the exception of not going through Angel Stadium,
Right.
which was always the highlight of the half course. Not only did we not go through Angel Stadium itself, we did not run under, like we used to run under or next to the Angel Stadium sign.
Yeah.
Which is fine because their photo pass is terrible, so they never would have captured it properly anyway. In hindsight, why bother?
Good point.
And so I would say, for me, the great aggravation with the course was the parking lot miles around Angel Stadium, which I have not run the current Disney World Marathon course, but everyone says, how much they hate Blizzard Beach, and they say Angel Stadium said, hold my beer.
Right.
So we definitely looped around between the Honda Center, we looped around, and then coming through Angel Stadium, we looped around several times there, and you just kept going back and forth and seeing people. And it was like, when am I ever going to get out of this parking lot?
Okay.
So I would say that was the most frustrating part. And because it comes so far at the end of the race, you're at that point where you're like, I'm just done. Like, can I just be done? So, but from an entertainment standpoint, I think it was very similar.
Okay.
To what we used to have. I think there's a little bit of us that remembers it much more fondly just because of the way that things were,
Of
right?
course.
And that it's just, we had the rose tinted glasses over our old experience, but I don't actually think it was incredibly different than our old experience. I think maybe one or two bands or groups more on course, but otherwise we had the collectible cars. There was way more around the Honda Center than we ever had. There were, people on course. We did get like a couple of cosplayers came out. Obviously they came out on their own. It was not a group, but they came out on their own to cheer. But I never really felt, I never really felt that the streets themselves were missing anything that we used to have. Like, I just know, I kind of knew what to expect. And you and I had talked about it. We kind of knew this could impact the volunteers and whatever. So I think I went in with this expectation that it was going to be what it's going to be. So yeah, for me, I thought, yeah, this is kind of how it is. And like, I was explaining to a friend ahead of time because she was like, talks about the marathon course a lot, and like she had talked about like how horrible Western Way is, and I was like, wait till you get to Anaheim. You think Western Way is bad?
and here's the thing: is everybody wants to say, well, Disney World would never, and I'm like, y'all,
they do.
They do. You just don't realize it because you're not seeing like the regular streetmosphere of the city of Anaheim.
Correct.
Because you're in the Disney bubble over on Disney World. But like mile per mile, I still say that you get more.
You do.
Park time from a Disneyland race, even the half marathon, than you do for the half marathon at Disney World, mile per mile.
No, you definitely do. It's just that it's all up front.
Yes.
And so, you know, having run Disney World, the thing that I do love when I do run Disney World, and I care, which is almost never, but I'm sure someday that'll come back, is that it chunks it down for you into smaller bites, right? So you're like, okay, if I run from here to here, it's only 3 miles, you know, it's 4 miles, I hit TTC, right? So there's always like something to be like, okay. And then once I get through TTC, then I hit Magic Kingdom and I'm at mile 5 or 6 or whatever. I'm not really sure of the new course half because I only ran half of it this time. So, but like you have that where you're like, okay, and then I go from here to here. And so that breaks up your course. And I think that is the hardest part about Anaheim is you get all of your park time up front.
Yep.
And then the back half or the back, you know, whatever, miles 5 to 13, you're just on road. So there are no characters, there are no photo paths.
And there are no characters out there. That is something to really like point out is again, because it's like the city of Anaheim, it's not Disney. And so Disneyland is not going to put characters out there. Well, you know, yeah, that's just the way it is. I will also point out that this could be different. I'm not saying it will be, but it could be different. Anaheim Stadium could be an opportunity to run through for the Halloween half where you just got the parking lot for this one. I understood that people were saying that runDisney was trying to get us to be able to run through the Anaheim Stadium, but there was like a monster truck rally or something going on.
There was an event at 2:00 that same day. And so you couldn't clear it.
They just couldn't clear it, which made sense, right? The other thing to know about or to recognize is that in the past, when we ran those half marathons, the Disneyland half marathon weekend was in September. And we always ran through Anaheim Stadium. The race that was held in January, which was Tinkerbell for a while, and then it turned into Star Wars, never ran through the stadium. They actually routed it a different route altogether. So you never even went by the stadium. So that, you know, is just something to kind of keep in mind is that, again, in the past, runDisney did have completely different half marathons. So we may or may not go through the stadium. We may or may not go by the stadium. They could use a different route that doesn't include that part. I ran multiple variations of the half marathon back in the day. I liked them all. I did like going through the stadium. Me too. I thought it was cool. But I also did not mind the non-stadium courses. Those were the ones that they did tend to like make more of a point to have like cosplayers out and to have kind of a little bit more going on to, I think, make up for the fact that we didn't have a stadium run. But going through the stadium was cool. It's an experience. It's something you don't get. It's kind of like riding Everest on the marathon. Like you don't get to run through a baseball stadium in the middle of a half marathon ever. Right. So, you know, I hope that Anaheim, that is an option for the Halloween half, because that'd be very, very cool if you guys got to do it. Weather-wise, it was good weather. Again, solid running weather, like once you were out there moving and whatnot.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was definitely cold in the morning. You know, I went out with multiple layers and I layered my layers under my costume shirt because I was thinking about the 10K the day before, and it was super cold and I never shed layers. And I was like, okay, it's going to be the same way. And because I was walking and not running,
Mm-hmm.
I was not heating up as quickly as I would if I was running. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll do this, whatever. And then around mile 3, I had to strip off. So I apologize to anybody who ran by me while I went off to the side in Tomorrowland and literally pulled my clothes off to get the bottom layer off. But I was absolutely sweating at that point. And yeah, so it was cold. Like, it was definitely chilly. I kept a long sleeve with my short sleeve over it, but I had like a sweatshirt that was underneath it. And so I ditched that around mile 3. And then the rest of the way I was pretty comfortable. So weather-wise, it was good. We need to talk about the water stops again. I mean, I've already given you my rants about PhotoPass and how terrible they are and how they didn't get my castle photo and all that good stuff. So we're good there. But the water stops. When you came in, there was a mile, it wasn't mile 1, but it was somewhere in the 1.5-ish range. And it was the very first water stop. It was behind, it was backstage behind Cars Land. And the water stop was an absolute cluster. It was just like too tight, too narrow. I personally was like, okay, this is a cluster. Stay in the middle, go right through. I don't need anything. Just keep going, keep going. And it was not great. Mile 3 was even worse. Mile 3, you came to an absolute standstill for, again, what feels like 10 years, but was ultimately less than 1 minute for me. I heard further back that it was closer to 3 to 5 minutes for some people.
I was hearing 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah, that's what I heard too. Yep.
Yeah. So the reason that I know was because when we first got to it, I took a photo because I tend to do this when things happen, to be like, okay, click, so that I remember that it happened, because 2.5 hours, 3 hours later, I'm like, what? Oh, I forgot that existed. And so I took a photo and then I took video of us getting through it. I actually thought when we hit, it was the mile 3 mile marker and a water stop. I thought there was like a train going by or something, and that was why we couldn't go. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, I was like, are they moving the train? I also want you to know there is no train there. There's no train. There's no track. What was I thinking?
I don't know.
It was it was next to Soarin', like as you're coming out, like you would go backstage from DCA to come out into the Esplanade to cross into Disneyland. But somehow in my head, there was a train track there.
Sure.
No train track.
No train track. Yeah.
But we were like dead stopped, and then we started like inching through there. But that was really bad. So I hope that they learn about water stop placement. And also about like the width of things. So like if you're going to do a water stop, you kind of need it to be in a spot that is a little bit wider, because people do slow down on both sides of the course, and you need to make room for people to keep moving. But so that was like pretty bad on that course. Otherwise, it was a great course. It reminded me of exactly the old courses. It actually, I think both, probably the 5, the 10, and the half. It was the first time I'd ever run through Galaxy's Edge, because I've never done any of the courses here that went through Galaxy's Edge. So, so that was super fun for me. Like, I was like, oh my God, we're totally doing this. But I do also want to mention, as I do say, we all run with rose tinted glasses for the Disneyland races of yesteryear. Y'all, these water stops have been clusters before. We have had this multiple race weekends. So some of it might just be the nature of the beast.
It could be. Also, like, because you mentioned Galaxy's Edge, it triggered probably my biggest disappointment and my biggest, like, WTF, Disneyland. You have 2 brand new lands, Galaxy's Edge and Avengers Campus, that none of us have ever run through before. You routed us through there all 3 races. There was not a single character.
Not one.
For Avengers Campus. And it wasn't until the half marathon that they finally threw up some characters from Star Wars for Galaxy's Edge. There was Chewbacca and Rey.
Yes.
Were in there. So that's all we're asking. I'm not telling you like that you need to make a character stop through those places, even though we would love that as an opportunity to get a picture with the Mandalorian and Baby Grogu. That would be amazing. But if you can't do that, at least have the characters out, whatever, right? Like something, because we have these 2 new lands and you guys totally blew it by not having anything out there. I could not believe when we went through Avengers Campus.
Correct.
We did get this. We got the music. That was great. But there was so it was bad show is I guess what I want to say. Because you could have those characters up on the thing, like walking and waving and talking to us as we ran by. We don't want that either. We want to take pictures with them. But you could, if that's what you needed to do. Y'all needed to do that. You needed to have some characters from Avengers and from Galaxy's Edge out there, and you did not. So that was a big miss, in my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I will also say that they did a lot of the characters up versus character meet like photo ops. I don't like that.
I don't either.
I'd like, and as somebody who on the half, I was stopping for nothing.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't even stop. My friends would be like, oh, let's stop and take a selfie. And I was like, absolutely not. I need to finish this half. I am walking. I am in that. I got to go, like Patty said. So when we took selfies, it was literally like, you got to keep moving with me in order to grab this selfie because I am not stopping. And even with that, I was like, wow, these characters, they're way high. They're super far away. Like it was just not the same.
No, it's not the same.
It was like Clarabelle was up somewhere and Rey and Chewbacca was up somewhere. And like, it was just a lot of like not accessible.
Agreed. I do think that again for the amount that we're
Jack and Sally, that was the other one, which I think was the 10K.
Yeah. For the amount of money that we're paying, you guys need to figure out the character meet and greet situation because especially high, those Halloween half marathon prices are even more. Which again, I'm going to pay it. That's not me complaining about the paying, but I do think that the value needs to be there. And fix your pictures, fix your photographers. I want more options for photos, but I also want better, like train them, get somebody from PhotoPass Disney World to do some Zooms and to have some conversations, bring them out to show them what to do. I don't care what y'all do, but you got until September to fix that. But then, I think your character situation could absolutely be improved in a lot of ways. Just like, don't be a coward. Just, you're going to have lines and you're going to manage the lines and it's going to work out and it's going to be fine.
Correct.
We did this before. We're going to do it again. We do this 4 times a year at Disney World. We can do it at Disneyland. We know how to behave. We know how to act. Like, come on, guys, let's do this. Let's do this. Like,
well, and I look at,
let's do this.
I look at like my old race photos and I went through them to be like, hey, like what photos are there? Like what photos were on course that I was able to take? And I was like, oh my God, like there were just so many. And like, not all of them were some amazing out of, whatever character. It was just like, but they made stops and I remember waiting in line for them. And sometimes like, I'll never forget, like they had Roz on course for the Monsters Inc. 10K that one year.
Yeah.
And I did not stop because the line was so long. And I really wish that I had stopped because it was such a good stop.
Yep.
But like, that's the kind of thing that it's like, listen, if we want to wait in line and spend our time waiting in line for that, cool. But like, there weren't even really options. Like it was just so limited. And then especially with it being the half, I felt like, not to discount other races because nothing annoys me more. Listen, I am a 2-time dopey. So like I get the whole dopey is a very big deal, but nothing annoys me more marathon weekend than everybody feeling less than dopey. Like it's like, if you don't run dopey, then you didn't run, which I think is garbage. But the longer the race, the more you should, like, the better your option should be, or the better your experience should be.
I don't disagree.
And that sort of was incredibly disappointing. And I think once you take that and then you couple it on with, well, then the last 8 miles of this race is just roads of Anaheim.
Parking lots.
Yeah. Right. It is. It's
Yeah.
parking lots. Then it does really become like the fun that you had 2 hours ago suddenly disappears by the time you get to the end of it. And,
Yep.
you know, I say that when I tell you that I finished this race. I was so happy. I love it so much. I will sign up every stupid year. I will continue to give them all that money, but like there's opportunities for you to pick it up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's us, right? There is this subgroup of us who will come back year after year, regardless. Right.
Correct.
But there's more that they need to fill those spots and to fill those slots and to continue to have these races that you do need to listen to and that you do need to make some changes. So my hope is that, again, anybody that like walked away from that race weekend and said they did not enjoy it, like I understand where you're coming from. I'm not going to try to tell you that you're wrong and it's the most magical thing in the entire world. I absolutely think there were some complaints that you could make or that we could complain. We just did, right? Like we said the things that we didn't like. But I also know that there's still a subset of us who we're going to come back regardless. It's the same thing at Walt Disney World. There's lots of stuff at Disney World I don't like at all anymore, but I come back all the time and I'm going to keep coming back all the time. It's just who I am. It's who we are. There's fewer of us than there are. They need more of you, of the normal people who just want to come out and do the one race one time and want to have a great time. So please make sure that you email, that you let your displeasure know in very specific terms, like what you are looking for or what you think that they could do to improve. Because we have seen it. They do listen to feedback. They do make changes and improvements where they can, when they can. I mean, my Pollyanna self of me is like, maybe that's why the prices went up, is because they're going to add, more photo pass or they're going to add more characters. I doubt it. But I'm just saying, I had that moment of thought of hey, maybe they're just realizing they need to add more. And so they got to charge us more. But we'll see.
It could be. I mean, it very well could be, right?
I don't know the financial,
in a budget.
Yeah, ramifications.
Yeah, they're okay, we need to give more. Well, we can't just give more and then make less. So we have to charge a little bit more.
And you also got to realize cost of running a business in California, very different than the cost of running the business in Florida. In Florida, they were Walt, the lore goes all the way back to Walt being smart about how he bought that land and how he structured working with the government there and all of that good stuff. How did he do that? Because he learned from his mistakes in Anaheim. So Anaheim is definitely run in a different situation. The Anaheim resort, everything is going to be run very differently than what you're going to get at Florida. So yes, it could have been something that they were to make our profit margins good, we couldn't give you as many things. So maybe they increase costs or they increase the prices to us so that they can. I don't know if that's how that works. I'm not going to pretend that it's for sure, but could be. We'll see. Okay, that's it. We're going to wrap this up. This is the longest I think that we have ever done for a podcast. I am not surprised at all that it was Run Disney, Disneyland.
I know. All. We're going to have to put timestamps in on everything so that people can fast forward.
Okay, that would assume that I know how to do that. You got to remember who's the editor here.
Just in the show notes, you'll be at this time, at whatever, 1 hour is when we start talking about the half, because there's going to be people that are going to be I don't want to sit through 3 hours of them talking.
I'll get right on that.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Listen, listeners, I tried.
I'll do what I can. All right.
If you want to tell us your feelings about the Disneyland half. Do you want to run again? Do you not want to run again? What do you think they could improve? What did we miss? I'm sure there was things that we missed. Let us know. Email us, noguiltdisneypod@gmail.com, or join us in our Facebook group, which is No Guilt Disney, and join us every month-ish on this podcast, because as Patty likes to say,
it is no fun to fangirl the return of Run Disney at Disneyland alone. See you guys in September.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.